One of my favorite childhood memories is helping my mom out in the kitchen. Whenever there's a big celebration, it's always my mom, my aunts, my sister, and I running around, making sure that everything is perfect before mealtime. I cannot remember exactly when it happened, but somewhere along the way, I started noticing a pattern. I realized that while the women were busy in the kitchen, making sure that the food is ready, the table is set, the dishes are done, the boys and men were right in front of the TV in the living room. Now, being the little snitch that I was, I remember complaining to my mom that the boys seemed to get away with not helping out. Her response was, "You're right, but don't let anyone hear you say that." And here I am telling all of you today. 20 years down the road, I still see the same pattern. Friends talking about their husbands babysitting their child while they're out. Colleagues rushing home from work to make sure that dinner is ready on time. And little girls being taught to care for their siblings even when they're children themselves. We make ourselves feel better about this by saying, hey, girls just mature faster. Women are natural multitaskers. But are we really? I suspect it's a coping mechanism. I became even more interested in the social setup. Who decides who does what in the household? And why are women doing most of the heavy lifting even when we have full-time jobs? And why do we typically pay for services like cooking and cleaning, but not when it's quietly being done at home every single day? I later learned that there is a name for this, and it's called unpaid care work. I was surprised to find out that it's a whole field of research and not just something I complain about. Unpaid care work is the daily maintenance task that is required to sustain a human being, a household, and also the economy. And as the name suggests, it's done for free. It may seem like simple tasks, such as cooking and cleaning and taking the trash out and picking the kids up from school. But it is a very critical life-sustaining activity that ensures the well-being of every single one of us. Everyone here has either performed or benefited from unpaid care work at some point of their lives. What I found most shocking from my research is that even in the most gender egalitarian societies, there's no such thing as an equal distribution of care and chores. Well, traditionally, this was not much of a problem because marriage was an economic institution in which the roles of each partner were clearly defined. Men, the breadwinner, and women, the caregiver. And fast forward to today, conversations about equality often revolves around smashing the glass ceiling and climbing the corporate ladder, ignoring the very thing that is keeping women at home in the first place. And as a result, we are living in a half-gender revolution. Women are expected to work like they don't have families and care for their families like they don't have to work. Now, before I proceed any further, it's very important for me to point out that I am not here to dismiss men's amazing contribution to unpaid care work. We see you and we appreciate you. However, it is very important for me to talk about the inequalities that still persist in status quo. Globally, 75% of unpaid care work is still being performed by girls and women alone. With often no limit to working hours, they collectively clock in 12.5 billion hours every single day. But how do we make sense of this all? What are these numbers anyway? A research has shown that if we were to properly value unpaid care work, the size of the sector is about 13% of the global GDP. That is larger than the tech industry. Another research has shown if we were in Switzerland, the size of the sector is almost the same size as the banking and insurance industry. This does not make sense. The problem is deeper than just culture. The GDP does not recognize unpaid care work. It doesn't care. It sees unpaid care work as something that is unproductive. Now, this is a huge problem because we often rely on this data to make important public decisions. And without visibility, we continue to ignore the need for care. And as usual, women are expected to step in for the lack of social services. And surprise, surprise, we do it for free. And over time, society gets used to the idea that caregiving is not real work. Some of us say it's the labor of love, and you cannot put a price on that. Conversation about the recognition of unpaid care work often gets lost in the culture wars about where women belong in society and the idea that it's a private matter that should be solved behind closed doors. We tell women, don't air your dirty laundry while they're doing laundry. We ignore the fact that most of the time, women are not able to negotiate their way out of what is perceived to be their God-given role as nurturers. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot continue to assume that the work that is quietly being done at home does not directly impact our ability to become productive members of society. You cannot go to work if your bed is not made, if your child is not bathed, and if your food is not taken care of. Unpaid care work is real work. It is the work that has enabled the mainstream economy to function. Now, if any one of us here is still not convinced, in 1974, the women of Iceland staged a one-day strike. Out of frustration, they simply refused to perform any childcare and any caregiving. And the result was, the entire country came to a standstill, men had to leave work early, offices had to close, and fast food was sold out everywhere because there's just no one to cook. This is the power of women. Now, as societies re-emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic, asking, how do we build back better? How do we come back stronger as a community? It's time to reshape a different reality for women. The existing model of care is just simply unsustainable. Now, in my opinion, the current solutions that we have are ironically way too focused on women. What if we ungender care policies and include men in the process? Some of us are just so uncomfortable with the idea of getting men to help that we are more than happy to outsource it to another woman and pay her to do it. But care is gender neutral. It is what we need and what we do as human beings. The current corporate and social structure not only fails to support women, it effectively shuts men out of the joy of raising a family. Look, longer maternity leave is amazing, but when it is significantly longer than paternity leave, it threatens the very equality that we are trying to achieve. Men are also highly disadvantaged from the expectations for them to immediately rush to work after just a week of helping out. Unfortunately, no country in the world has managed to figure out how to equalize care. But not all hope is lost. In 1975, Sweden became the first country to introduce a gender-neutral parental leave. And today, out of a whopping 480 days that new parents are entitled to, 3 months are specifically reserved just for dads. It's not equal, but it's a lot. Now, when you walk down the streets of Stockholm, it's very common to see men spending one-on-one time with their child while mom is off to work. Interestingly, care policies have not always worked. In Japan, for example, dads get up to a year off, but most don't take any time off at all. So why is that? The biggest takeaway that I've learned is that progressive policies are great, but on their own, they're insufficient to counter long-established societal norms. And countering long-established societal norms starts with us questioning our own internalized beliefs of what it means to be a man and a woman. The traditional construct of femininity and masculinity is so ingrained in our psyche that most of us don't even question it. Look at how we portray men and women in movies. And when you see a commercial for a cleaning product, who's the one who's most likely doing the cleaning? In Sweden, aside from its progressive policies, there was also a pop culture revolution. TV shows and movies portrayed a good dad as a present dad and a caring dad, doing away with toxic masculinity and sending the message that there is nothing unmanly and unmacho about being involved and loving your family. It's time for us to normalize the involvement of men in care. Now, what about the GDP? It's time for us to start asking ourselves what we value as a society. What should we count as an indicator of success? And it starts with recognizing the fact that the success of the economy has been built on the backs of generations of women as daughters, wives, and mothers. Ladies and gentlemen, the road to equality is a long and winding one. But we have reached a juncture where we can decide to make it a smoother journey. Instead of constantly telling women to lean in, perhaps it's time for everyone else to reach out and help women unload the burden of care. When we ask the question, who cares? The answer should be every single one of us. Thank you.